Welcome to the EdTech Throwdown. Join us, Eric Geis and Nick Johnson, as we dive into today's best EdTech tools, tips, and practices. We do the research so you can teach your class. Remember to follow us on social media like Instagram, X, or Facebook by looking for the handle @EdTech Throwdown. Now please enjoy the show.
Welcome to the EdTech Throwdown. This is episode 198 called Educators as AI Guides Crafting Resources for Families and Communities. In this episode, we will walk through a step-by-step process that educators can follow for creating AI resources that are not just for staff and students, but the community as a whole. This is another episode you don't want to miss. Check it out.
All right, we're back with episode 198.
198.
Yeah, and this is one that we've been failing a lot at as we've gone through this process. Not failing, just we're finding new avenues. We're trying to dig our own way. So, if we're underground and we're trying to dig underground, every once in a while we'll come to a sheet of bedrock that we just need to go a different way and try to find our path. But this is all a new territory, but it's kind of been around for a while, like 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, I like your comparison there, the idea of hitting bedrock and having to come up with a way to get through, because what we're talking about here is really not only education trying to grapple with AI, but how do you share that out? How do you make it accessible and digestible, not only for staff and students, but the eventual endpoint of this, which is what today's episode is all about, with the community as a whole. Because one thing that starts to happen eventually is parents are curious and have questions about, what is your school district doing about AI? Maybe they are on the side of they don't like it. They think it's bad for all the reasons that it's bad, and they want to know how the school's addressing that. Maybe they do like it. Maybe they want to make sure that their students are being taught about this thing that's going to be a huge part of their lives. Whatever side they're on, people want to know. The community wants to know what school districts are doing. And one thing the school district can't do is just bury its head in the sand and have nothing to say to that question.
Yeah, no position is not a position.
Right.
You have to come out and you have to say something. And really, that's just to protect the school district. It's to protect the teachers, the students, all the stakeholders need to be on board with the same thing. So just so everything can move forward. We don't need to worry about any type of law or anything along those lines, as long as you communicate clearly. And I think a lot of districts, unfortunately, they're trying to throw these policies in place after the fact. So just get out there, and whether it could be a work in progress. It doesn't need to be set in stone, but there has to be some guidelines there. And really, that needs to be presented to the top from somebody that is invested in the AI process and what it's all about, and then agreed upon by the top and presented back down to the members, like the teachers and the students and things like that. Now, how it's presented, we'll get through that today, but really the whole goal here is to continue to make the learning environment within your district or your school or your classroom a safe space. And not talking about it is leaving a lot of cloudiness over this topic of AI and how we can use it beneficially, safely, respectfully in your classroom.
Yeah, because everybody has a stake in knowing about these tools. Like I said a little bit ago, whatever side you're on, you need to know, because it just is affecting so much of modern day life. So that's one of the goals of this thing. And schools, as they have always been, at least in the United States, are often the place where this information comes from. A school is one of, it's an institution that is always there as a central hub for the whole community, and is often where things like this come from. So I think AI is following that same trajectory, where this might be where people learn about it. And for us, where this is coming from now is, we've talked before on the show about, how we have been part of a group at our school that has been developing a lot of AI tools for teachers and students. And recently, we've had community reach out and ask for that stuff. And in particular, for us, it was a local library that wanted to put on some AI presentations for the community. So, of course, they reached out to the school district to say, hey, what are you guys doing? How are you teaching students? What are your staff doing with AI in their classrooms? And would you be willing to collaborate on creating some resources for the community? Maybe if there's like some presentations, a couple of those could be letting community members know what is happening in the schools via the public library system. And it was cool to me because it's sort of, I saw this as like the conclusion of this 3-year journey that we've been on that we will now walk you through in this episode. So here's kind of the vision and the reason we put this together for you guys today. From start to finish, what can a school district do to eventually end up with these polished products about AI and how it's being used in schools and what it is and how it can benefit and how it can hurt? How does a school district develop that? And then how do they share it out with the community? This is a journey, obviously, that we've been on and that we're now in the final stages of. So we were just kind of picturing, wouldn't it be cool to have this podcast out there where maybe somebody is at the beginning stages could listen back to it and get some tips, some things that we've learned along the way. Because as you just pointed out, there's tons of stumbling blocks. We've tried this many different ways and had to either restart or go back and redo. And hopefully sharing that can help some people move through it faster. So that's the point of this thing. As always, we're just going to pause for a quick word from the Teach Better Podcast Network before we get into the main segment and share this journey with our listeners as well.
This podcast is a proud member of the Teach Better Podcast Network. Better today, better tomorrow, and the podcast to get you there. You can find out more at teachbetter.com/podcasts. Now let's get back to the episode.
All right, so we have come up with several steps that you could use to bring in your AI policy to your school district and communicate it. And we're going to kind of get into the first one as we've already done some background information. So what I mean by that is the first level that you need to do is start at the top. You need to come up with a policy that is backed by the board and superintendent. All right, so to establish this policy, that is the first thing. And this could be a slow and painful, tedious process. All right, but we must start here so you have a legally backed document to fall back on. This is a policy that's going to be shared with all the stakeholders at the end. And to get there, we said it could be slow and painful, but what you really need to do is start identifying the stakeholders' opinions on the topic of AI. So you need to gather some data here, some collection points that you can start to build a collection of opinions so we are covering everyone's needs. So we need to know the needs of the teachers. What do they need to feel supported in this policy? What do the students need to feel supported? What the administrators need to know in order to be able to do their jobs, like academic dishonesty or just the integrity of the usage of AI. Same thing with the parents. They need to know so they can guide their students in the right direction at home. Parents are a big part of this. So after you start getting some of these opinions, you can further develop your policy here by getting a focus group. And we did this with different departments, teachers of all different grade areas, all different levels and things like that. We are seeing AI usage, the most of it in the high school, but middle school and elementary school need to be included because maybe there are some tools that the younger age kids can use and they could start practicing best practices there. All right, and once all this data is collected, you could start identifying proper use and misuse of AI, which is going to help you get to that policy.
It's crazy important, though, that everybody hears this, if nothing else, and that is you must begin at the top. It has to come from the board. It has to come from the superintendent. You were just talking about, focus groups and wordsmithing and stakeholders. That's all crazy important. And something that we did ourselves 3 years ago because we wanted to like hop on this, because we kind of just in the tech world, right? We saw where this was going and wanted the school to have something in place. So we wrote it. Like, we came up with what we thought would be good policy. And guess what happened to that policy that we wrote was pretty much thrown in the garbage, because we're not lawyers, we're not on the board, we're not the superintendent, and it had no teeth to it. So while it was good, like I like what we did, it would have been useless if anybody ever pushed back on it. So it went to the board, and the board hired whatever their lawyer is to write the policy. And I don't know a whole lot about that process because we weren't a part of it, but it is important that that initial document is legally backed and agreed upon by the highest people. So anything you create from this point forward links back to that, so that you are safe and everything is protected from a legal standpoint.
And though our document wasn't used, it was still in that official
Correct.
document. Like, the lawyer did use
Yep.
a lot of the stuff that we did, because, we hit the ground running, getting and collecting all the data from the teachers and all the students and the parents and the admin, and we did our due diligence there. For sure. So let's get on with the second one, which is establish an AI director for the district. This is not going to be a hired position, obviously. It's not a new position. Someone will probably inherit this, and usually it's someone in the tech role that is familiar with AI. And this is just really the point person that's going to help get these focus groups together, help communicate whatever you need to push out, just updating the things on the website or however you're sharing out the policy, and finding best ways to reach all the stakeholders along this journey.
Because one way to make sure that whatever AI resources you create, right? Let's say you make this whole beautiful, Canva website with all the AI stuff. If it is not being constantly updated, then it will very quickly become unusable and just kind of fall by the wayside and become useless. And we see this happen all the time in education. Somebody puts in a bunch of time to make this, whatever this hub of information is, and then that's it. It just sits there. And then years and years go by and nobody looks at it until somebody does look at it, maybe 5 years down the road, and all the information is out of date anyway. And then it's just like, well, this is completely useless. And then that is essentially a waste of time. So you need a person, an established role, who is responsible for updating it. Ideally, this person also brings in a small team. It makes sense if your school has tech coaches or media specialists to make those people part of that team to help. Because when done properly, there's a lot of work to do here. But you gotta be vigilant about these things, especially with AI. Just because of the pace at which this whole world is changing. So this needs to be an ever-evolving document, and that is updated on a regular schedule, and this AI director is the person that can do that. Once you've got that in place, okay, so quick recap. We've got our official legal policy. We have a director who's in charge of facilitating and updating the information. The next step is to start to create a space, a public spot that clearly communicates that policy. And I don't mean here like a version of the policy. I mean, here's copy pasted word for word the policy, the thing the lawyers wrote in our step number one. For me, obviously this is going to be a website because I can't really think of anything else that makes sense here. You're not going to put like a legalese thing in a social media post, right? Because it's all text, it's words, it's boring, it's too fleeting, right? That once the people scroll past that on their feed, it's gone. You need a spot where you can always go, where you can always direct people to say, this is in our official board policy, please see item 3, number 1A, or whatever it is. But that's got to be accessible. Sometimes these board approved documents are tough to find. And you want to make this not tough to find just because of how important and how many questions can arise about it. It could just be like a Google Doc that gets linked somewhere. But the point is, we will need a public space for the actual official policy document itself.
Yeah, I mean, that space is very, very important in all of this. And so is the next thing, which is getting digestible versions of that policy out there. So how can we do that? Well, once you have that website, you could always link back to it and then get the powerful tidbits within that website, put it to an infographic. No one likes to read the policy, but they like pictures and they like infographics and things like that. So maybe that's one way to get that out there. Nick definitely put this in the show notes, shoehorn it as in a FAQ page. And I was laughing because my 10-year-old asked for a shoehorn the other day randomly. So I got him a shoehorn. It was like a little cheap plastic one. And it was hilarious because now he uses a shoehorn.
Why? Wait, can we just focus on that for a little bit? Why? How does a 10-year-old even know what a shoehorn is, let alone ask for one?
I don't know, but he uses a shoehorn to put on his sneakers every morning.
All right, here's an even crazier. You're not going to believe this.
Okay.
My 4-year-old, over the summer, so not exactly last week, also asked me for a shoehorn. And again, I have no idea where she learned about it, but she also prefers to put on her shoes like a 70-year-old man who can't bend over with a shoehorn. That's hilarious.
Yeah, I don't know why, and he just does it. But,
that's awesome.
He also is 70 going,
at heart,
10 going on 70, I should say.
That's funny.
Yeah. All right, you could also beautify it with a PDF, and Nick is very good at one-paging it. Just doing a one-pager that has basically all the things that you need there, but instead of all the detailed version, he'll give you the snapshot sentence and he'll bold like 2 words. So AI policy, and it'll be a link to that. But then AI usages will be the next one. And what he'll do there is he'll say proper use, improper use, and he'll give you the skeleton form of that sheet. But if you want the examples, you can click on that link and go there. So that's another good way of getting information out. You could also create a slide deck, whether it's Google Slides or Canva or whatever it might be. And if you have those TVs that run in your school, or if you have a cable channel, some schools have cable channels, those slides can be ran there and people can access it when there's downtime. All right, if you're not presenting anything on that cable channel, having those slides up there isn't the worst idea. And in the school building, you can every once in a while shuffle it in when, some of your student pictures are there. Every once in a while, shuffle in something about the AI policy.
Yep, that's a very important step, obviously, because nobody wants to read real policy. One thing I can say here, having done this myself, is let AI tools help you with this process where you can, choose your whatever tool you want. Let's just say Google Gemini. Just copy paste that board policy straight in there and ask it to summarize this in an easily digestible way, written in language that a common person understands. Because at least ours, like I said, was in that legalese kind of lawyer speak, and people can get through that, but it's a slog. And it's also tough for you to be the one to turn that into something that is, bite size, but you don't necessarily have to, because the AI tools can help you with it. And that's what I did when we created our document. That was easier. And then one other thing that I have found people like is in the infographic version or the FAQ page version, you want to always reference back to the original policy, right? So if I have a little snippet or a small section on student misuse and how that's going to be handled, this abbreviated version needs to also reference Section 5, Item 1C of the policy so that people, if they really wanted to, for the sticklers, could go back and easily find what the actual version of that is. So you're also then being super transparent. Like, yeah, this is the processed version of the policy, but also we are telling you how exactly where to find the real version of the policy too. I just think people appreciate that kind of thing, and going that extra mile by always linking it back to the real version, I think goes a long way. Okay, so we've got all these things in place, and now comes kind of the beginning of the final sharing out phase, which for us started with one public hub for everything that we've talked about so far, and then everything that we're going to talk about from this point forward. Call it what you like, make it what you like. Again, I think a website is the only option that makes any sense here at all, just because this is where people are going to go when they're looking for information like this. They're going to head to the district webpage and see if they can find in the menu something that says AI policy, AI resources, AI vision, whatever. But this place will have all of the stuff. It's got a link to the board policy. It's got a link to the infographic version of that board policy that we just talked about. It's got a section specifically for staff and all the things that are related to them, which we'll get into next. It's got a section specifically for students and all the things that they might care about related to AI. And it's got a section for parents and the community and all the things that might matter to them. The point is, it's got everything all at once so that it's easy to point people to just one spot. And that one spot, as I said at the beginning, but I'll say it again because I think it's key, it's got to be on the district website, because that is where I think people will go first when they're looking for information. So however you can make that happen when you're putting this together would be extremely beneficial.
Yeah, so Nick was very vague as to what goes in there other than the actual board policy. But there are sections for staff, students, and community, which are our next three topics here. With the staff, you want to have survey and focus groups in the early stages. That stuff can go in there. Make them feel heard. This is a hot topic. This is something that we want them to be involved in. So let them know what we found. Show them the data. All right. You could do other things for the staff as well, such as in-person PD for the in-service days or extra stuff after school. You could have ready-made classroom materials like posters. I know we did this whole thing of use, what you can use and what you can't use, like the purposes behind the AI. We made posters. We gave those out to all the classrooms. All the teachers had it, so it was clearly communicated. But, stuff happens in classrooms. Posters go missing. They get damaged. Maybe put a copy of it in there in case they want to reprint it later. You could differentiate the options that they have for accessing the info and sharing it with students. For example, we make some videos for the teachers, the students, and everyone that is involved. Those videos can go on this hub so the teachers can access them whenever they need to. This could include slide decks and docs and things like that. We also included examples of syllabi. I guess that's the plural of syllabus, syllabi.
Yeah, I think so.
We included that, like syllabi statements that you can use and pull into your syllabus. Example assignment directions, second chance learning, use of computers and these AI tools. We have an AI Works Cited that we share out with the kids, because a lot of these AI tools, they have a link that you could share that is in a formatedly appropriate works cited for AI. But unfortunately, if they're over the age of 13 but under the age of 18, that link isn't always shareable on some of these sites. So you can't actually do a proper works cited. So we came up with our own that would be sufficient, where the student would have to list what AI tool they used, what their input to that tool was, so what the prompt was, and then also the output. And they would have to copy and paste that at the end of whatever their assignment is. So we can just see how they use the AI and make sure that they're doing their own work. But examples of that could go in there. I also like to include examples of ways that teachers are going to check for student work. So we have some of these AI checkers. And we know that they're not 100%, but it at least allows us to get a conversation with the kids. And usually that conversation ends with some type of truth being told. Or a lie. But, a lot of times, I'd say 80-85% of the time, the kids are super stressed out. They're in a crunch, and it was a desperation move. And they feel remorseful about it. Or they have a good acting, ability that makes us feel like we're on the same page and we're heard, and we give them another try or whatever it may be. But I like to communicate those ways with my students. I don't want it to be a gotcha. I don't want it to be like that. I want it to be, hey, the only way for you to get real worth out of this, for you to develop the skills needed to do research, is by doing the research. And if AI is not to be used because you want them to develop the skills, then that needs to be the case. So I like to put examples in there. I show them exactly how I check. Because if they want to get around all the different ways that I check, or if I want to, they're going to be putting in more work than just actually doing it. And I like to share that with them. So that's another video choice that I would do there. You could share whatever information you want with this hub, but this is also going to be part of that staff section. And for us, when you go onto our website, there's a staff section that is password locked. All right, so they would either have to enter a password or have to be signed on to their school email, and it's noted in the, all you have to do is basically say that anyone that's in this list of staff can access that portion of the website.
Just one other thing about this staff sharing component, and this is where it's extra key that you have already involved the staff from the very beginning. We mentioned right at the top, you got to get focus groups, you got to ask for input, you got to give staff members the chance to be heard, because if you end up at this 6th step and staff are hearing all of these things for the first time, you will likely get a lot of pushback because they will need to feel like they've been a part of the process all along. We did this at our sharing with staff phase, we still got pushback. People saying they didn't like how things were worded, or they don't think this example of how students can use AI should have been there for this reason or that. Now, we didn't get a whole lot, right? I think it was pretty minimal, but I believe it was only as minimal as it was because of how much we tried and tried and tried to get it out there at the early stages. So that can be very helpful. I also think you got to make sure that part of your staff share section is information about how teachers can prevent AI use and what to do if students are misusing it. Not because I think that's the most important thing, but because that's what largely teachers think is the most important thing. And for your average non-tech, non-AI centric teacher, that's what they're going to be looking for. I have a kid that I'm pretty sure used AI. What do I do? What can I do? What will administration support me on? That needs to be addressed, because if it's not, they're going to get immediately annoyed and complain that this doesn't serve their needs. So you got to watch out for that.
Yeah, and really that should be in the staff one, but it should also be shared with the next group, which are the students. And a lot of the same stuff is being shared here. It just might be shared differently. It will be on the student part of the website, but maybe it's shared out. The teachers get the policy. The kids don't need the policy. They need the bones that they're going to need to be able to do their job. No kid is going to read the policy. Well, maybe a couple. My oldest might read the policy, but
while he's putting on his shoes with a shoehorn.
There you go. Bring it full circle. But I mean, a lot of the same stuff goes there. It definitely needs to make it into the student handbook, but I think it could be simplified, and there could be, please revert to the school policy for more specifics. Here's the main ones. And one of those should be, what are the consequences if AI is used inappropriately?
And then finally, the whole point of this episode, the title was literally called, the title of episode 198, Crafting Resources for Families and Communities. And finally, we end with that. And it seems kind of weird to only, bookend it with this topic. But if you didn't do all that other stuff first, then it would be weird and hard to do this final phase, which is actually sharing it with the community, because what would you share with them? So that's where we are now. So what would that look like? Well, first you've got your resource hub created. Everything is there. It's got policy. It's got digestible versions of the policy. It's got info for staff. It's got info for students. And now that can be shared with the community to say, hey, look at all this stuff that we have artfully put together. This is for the first time, I think, where social media comes into play, because everything's been established. Now you can tell people about it in that way so that they can access it and check it out if and when they're interested. So finally that comes into play, whatever the school uses these days, or whenever you're listening to this episode, whatever the popular platform is, get it out there. I think the social media posts need to continue to happen, some kind of a schedule. I don't know whoever's responsible for that in your school district can keep it up and set that schedule. I also think part of this that would be extra cool is keeping it positive and giving people on those social media platforms specific examples of how teachers are using it in their classrooms, right, with kids. So like maybe, Mr. So-and-so, who's a well-known teacher within the school district, is using AI in this really innovative way that isn't students cheating, but is actually supporting their learning in some crazy innovative way. That needs to be shared out there too, just to kind of show people there is a very positive side to AI that can exist in education. So we're sharing out the hub, we're sharing out examples that are positive. Part of this now also is resources that are specific to the community, not necessarily in education. So here's where the school is actually serving as an educator on AI in general. What is it? What is an LM? That term that gets thrown around a lot. What exactly is that? Yes, how is AI being used in schools? But how can people use it in their everyday lives? And that's important because it's going to bring more people into your hub, and that's where the final stage of this collaboration with local groups can come into play. Because why is your local library going to partner with you unless you actually have something for the average person? Like AI can help you plan your grocery list for the week and give you the cheapest prices possible and what to buy while planning out the dinners you're going to cook. That's the type of thing that I think a lot of regular people maybe don't know they can do. And the school and whoever you're collaborating with can help share that out. We've been talking about an AI parents' night for a long time. As of right now, it's been scheduled and then unscheduled. It's funny, this year when we started, it was scheduled for October 8th in our district. And then just this past week, it got canceled again. So I don't know if it's ever going to happen. And it's now changed to instead of a night, we're doing a bunch of videos for parents. But whatever it is you're going to do with the community, they can have resources specific to them. So.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to kind of lead into our last one, which is to continue to update and educate all the stakeholders along the way. AI is not going away, and it's not going to stay the same either. It's forever changing. They keep coming out with new tools. They keep coming out with new practices, new ways to use it in education and real life, real world. So we need to stay on top of it and make sure that the communication doesn't go dormant. We need to showcase the new tools, any parts of the policy that gets updated or changed, any type of guidelines that we could give them. Maybe it might even be cool for the school district to show parents or community members how to use AI, not even in education, just hey, try this to go make a gourmet breakfast.
Right.
Can breakfast be gourmet?
Sure. Oh, yeah, it can. A fancy French toast. Why not?
Okay. Well, I'm not privy to such things. Just throw it on the skillet and we'll call it a day.
A little cornbread? How about a cornbread French toast?
Cornbread, French toast, put shoes on with shoehorn. Got
Beautiful.
It. All right. So, but you can push out any of these updates using social media, the superintendent newsletter, website update, videos, back to school night, just teacher-parent communication, teacher communication such as emails, newsletters that go out. I know in the elementary schools it's very popular for every Friday. Each teacher sends a bunch of pictures from the week and what they accomplished, what's coming up the next. I really dig it. I like it. I like to know what my kids have been doing and what's coming up so I can help them out with their homework, even though math, I don't know how they're teaching math nowadays. I don't remember learning that way. And me trying to explain the way that I learned math to them is so foreign to them.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. But They know how to, combine eras, decades, whatever, because we have that old trusty shoehorn.
That's right. So that's our journey. That's how we've done it. I'm sure we didn't nail everything perfectly, but we can definitely say that this is one process you can follow when it comes to just communicating AI with everybody within the school community. That also wraps it up for episode 198. As always, thank you for listening.
Thanks for listening to the EdTech Throwdown. Do us a couple of favors. Subscribe to our podcast on any major podcast catcher such as Apple, Spotify, Amazon Podcasts, and Stitcher. Go over to YouTube, search the EdTech Throwdown, subscribe to the channel. You can connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. The show's handle is EdTech Throwdown. You can connect with Geis at GeisGotTech, Nick at NickGotTech. You can write us an Apple Podcast review. You can tell your friends about www.edtechthrowdown.com. And lastly, go over and check out our friends over at the Teach Better Podcast Network, a network that we are so proudly involved with. Until next time, remember, go try some EdTech because we will do the research so you can teach your class.